Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I'm the streamer for this stream, and we work on a Django application, if you can't guess, which is a web framework that is used in Python, and it's a popular one and has a lot to it. So I walk you through a project that I've got going on, and you take the journey with me. Tonight, I don't really have a lot of particular direction that I want to go with my app. Hey, Oseta, welcome. So we're going to just go from the issues list for the project and dig into the next thing that's on the list. I've been away from a couple of weeks. I had a meetup last week, so I didn't stream, and I've made quite a bit of progress in that time frame. As I've said in previous streams, where I'm just going to be dipping in and out when I'm streaming here because my wife, who is going to be the consumer of this product, is expressed a desire to get it as quickly as possible. So I've been working pretty steadily. So we're going to jump in on where I am today. And I think that's going to be some template work to start. So I'm going to drop a link to the first piece of work we're going to look at, which is this guy right here. Issue 53. So I guess before we get into it, and before I describe the details of what I'm doing, there are plenty of ways to follow me. I've got links, or not links, but I've got URLs above that you can look at, or handles that you can find me on Twitter or GitHub. I do post this material to YouTube, so if you want to catch it later, you're welcome to do that. What else do I need to say? There's also a Patreon account, so if you like what I do enough to throw a couple dollars my way and are able to do that, that'd be awesome too. And it's the same name. It's patreon.com/mblehman. And I just want to thank my current patrons, Mark and Patrick, for your support. It helps out. What else should I say? I guess I don't highlight this much either. There's also a Discord that is linked below on the Twitch page there, that if you want to ask me questions that are not on the stream and are maybe a little bit longer form that might be suited for a Twitter chat or something like that, you're welcome to go there. I'm not super good about checking it all the time, but I promise I'll get to you eventually if I haven't checked it recently. I think that's all that I want to say. So today we're going to focus on this portion of the app that I've done, and I'll explain some new features that my wife has asked for the homeschool application that I'm building, so that you can understand what's going on. And if we can knock this one out, we'll move on to the next piece. So where we left off, I don't even know where we left off, but I'll just bring you up to date with what I've got. One of the features that my wife needed on this homeschool app that we're going to be using for our children is the ability to do grades and that sort of stuff. And I've got all the core pieces in there to do management of schools and tasks and stuff, and I'm trying to bring that up right now so you can see what that looks like. But what was highlighted to me was she needed an ability to track work. So my son is a second grader, and if he's got a math assignment that needs to get some sort of assessment to go with it, she wants to be able to track that in the app, which is a totally reasonable thing to ask for. I didn't realize it was going to be part of the MVP that she would need before she was ready to switch over from the current app that she's on, but she said that was important. So that's what I've been working on. Let's take a look. So the way I implemented that was, we can stare at the code, actually might make more sense, is with a couple of concepts in the models of the application. And let's bring up the models file for this particular Django app. So this app models things as grade levels have courses, and courses have tasks. So that's what my children will actually be doing, is a set of tasks. That's how my wife will be tracking the work. And so what I added to this concept was this possibility of having a one-for-one field with what she wanted to call graded work. I had suggested the name of assessment, and she didn't like it. And so I'm going to stick with modeling terms that she will resonate with in the future, since she is my customer. And so I created a new model called graded work. And the idea behind this model is that any task that will have the possibility to be graded will have graded work attached to it. And how that manifests in the list of stuff is with this little clipboard icon that was her choice, to show that there is something here that will be assessed. And so what happens in this flow is if she is looking at today and gets the list of tasks for all of that my kids are working on, she'll check off all of these things. And when she's done, she'll hit a complete button. And what that'll do is it will create records that associate with a course task to say that my kids have done it. But if there's also a graded work record attached to a task, it is going to kick off another page, which I can show. Should be students grade. So any work that has grades that need to be added can be added here. So it'll detect, oh, there was something that needed to be graded. Now's your chance to put in the value that was associated with that grade to give them a number on a 100 scale for now, which we can add grade levels and all that other kind of stuff later. But for now, it's just 0. Actually, it's a positive integer field, so she could put 10,000 in here if you wanted. But the idea is to be usually on a 100-point kind of scale, percentage-wise, to give credit for the different assignments that are due, or the work that's due with the tasks. So that's the flow that I added. And I realized that in one of the places that I put this, I only put it in one spot, which you saw, or maybe didn't see, but listing at a specific course, this view of this coursework is specific to my son. And if we scroll down, these are all of the lists, all of the tasks that are currently done. And then there are all of the tasks that remain to be done, which are in the full black here. And each of them that has a grade that's associated with gets this little icon. So that's cool. That's the primary view that she's going to have. But there is a secondary view that is not associated with the actual student. So when she's starting to create a new school year and needs to add grades for my 2 kids, then she would come in here and add the different courses, which I haven't even made an add course form yet, but we're getting there. And she'd click on one of these and go through here and be able to add new tasks and mark them as graded. But what you can see here, what's missing, or maybe you can't see, I guess I should say, is the little icon to mark that this is also graded work. So that's the piece that I want to add tonight, and that's what this issue represents. We're kind of adding some polish to this process right now, and I'm noticing some other things that we could do, like this. Well, actually, you can't see that because it goes off the top. But if you look at the title here, I've only got this listed as Math 2, but she was very explicit of she wanted to have the grade level incorporated in the name as well, so that if she ever named this to just be Math, for example, and one was Math for my daughter and one was Math for my son, then she could differentiate which math class it was and not get confused by that. So there are little tweaks that we can make, and we'll jump into the template to start doing that. So I'm going to go to the course. Which one is this? Is it the course detail? I think so. I think that's the right view. Let's check. I've got Debug Toolbar on here, so we can use this to our advantage. And you can see right here, it says there's a template section, and I don't even have to click the button because it's telling me that this is the template that it was rendering, course detail. So there's confirmation that we are on the right page. So the first thing I want to do is to change the title up here to match the name. And this is an interesting question. The way I've done this right now is I've used an SVG as the differentiator between, like it's this little caret here. Can't remember that. I'm drawing a blank on the name of that symbol, but it's that right-facing caret. But I don't think that's going to work on the title because I don't think you can have SVG icons up there. So let's try it just for grins and see what happens. Okay, greater than, yeah, that's probably that's the one name. Okay, just to be, because there was a specific name that I was thinking of. Greater than is a good commentary. Oh, so that should be the obvious name. Chevron, I think, is what it's called sometimes. Yeah, because it's meant to be like something a little smaller than a greater than symbol, kind of point in the direction. So yeah, that's what I was trying to think of, but I was failing to. But the icon set that I'm pulling from, which is Sonicons, which is actually cool. Okay, tangent. I use Tailwind CSS for my styling, and one of the pages that they have here is a resources and assets thing, which points you to different things where you can learn more about Tailwind. Like I've not purchased this myself yet, but I've heard really strong things about refactoring UI. It's supposed to be a really good product. But they also have links to a couple of interesting stuff. So if you're building your own apps and you're doing it on a shoestring budget like I am, they point you to some free resources. Like this is a free photography one called Unsplash, which I've used in the past for some blogging. That's super useful. It's a really great artwork, or not artwork, but photographs, for that you can use on posts and things. There's also this undraw stuff, but the one I want to highlight is they've got a couple of icon sets that they point out that these things are also free to use, and Sonicons is the one that I like for my style of app, so I'm going with that. But Sonicons is all SVGs, and Tailwind, when it describes how to add SVGs, is you put the literal SVG. I mean, I guess you could link out to an SVG resource, but they suggest putting the whole SVG in here like this. But what you lose with that problem, what you lose, I guess, is that you get this path, and I have no idea what this path is by itself. It's just a path of points that SVG is using. So you lose the name like Chevron. Anyway, let's try and dump it into this block and see what happens. I imagine it will fail, whoops, but it's worth trying. Ah, goodness. Try again. So, got all that stuff. If I refresh, wrong page, if I refresh this page, fun. That's what happened. So yeah, it's clearly not doing the right thing with, well, let me just leave it there for a moment, with SVG. So let's ditch that and just use a greater than symbol, which means I probably need to use an HTML escape. So GT semicolon. And it doesn't have quite the nicety of the chevron from the icon set, but in the title bar, it will work well, I think. Okay, cool. So that gives us that bit of tweaking, which is good. And the next thing we want to do is come in here and add in the graded work icon. So I'm gonna I have this in the other template, which is in the student course template. I'm gonna copy it from there because it should be basically the same thing, and it should be this block right here. And I'm copying it, and probably maybe shouldn't copy it. It might be better to like factor that out into like a little component thing, but I think this might be okay for now. So let's check this out, see how it goes. Let me resize that back to something better. Something wonky happened because now our icons are at the top, and it didn't work. So I think what happened is the other view has this has graded work attribute, which I don't have. Called it task item. Probably not right. This is still not going to work. Not going to know what that is. Okay. So we got stuff to do here. This is the right markup that I want, but the view context data, which is what's driving this whole view, is not correct right now. So it's relying on something that is added to this other view, this has graded work Boolean, that it does not exist in this course detail view. So let's look at the student views. and see where that came from. Okay. So, right. Because this is a one-to-one field, the way that you can do that reverse relationship checking is a little, I find it a little strange. It's a quirk of Django, in my opinion. The way that Django wants you to do that is with a has attribute check. If I try to do this and just say something like, let's comment this chunk out for a moment and replace it with course task, or like if I wanted to have a Boolean that was like course task graded work, there's a challenge with this, or there's a problem, I should say. And that problem is that if you do an access on a one-to-one field and that field doesn't exist, then what Django does is it raises a does not exist error, or related object does not exist, or something, a weird exception that we don't want. So what they suggest to do instead is use the has attr check, and it will avoid the actual like object lookup, I think. So I've not looked at to see what it's doing under the covers. Graded work is probably a descriptor, and just by checking if the descriptor is there, it might be able to check if there's a foreign key references there. I don't really know what's going on. I'm not really interested in that part right now. I just know that this is how Django handles these one-to-one field checking. So we need to follow suit with what's here. And I think I need to change some of this information to better reflect what we need in the template. So let's look at this bottom part down here. The way that I've accessed the template right now is that I've got the detail view that I'm using, and I'm calling the course tasks related name on it, which is supposed to will go get all the course tasks. So we are missing a view. Let's look at the other view to see what's going on. So here it is. It's a pretty short view for now. And what you can see that it's doing is it's using the detail view that's built in with Django. So that's doing a lot of the work for us. And it's using this query set to find what we need. And interestingly, how many queries is that running? It's only running 4. That's surprising to me. I don't think I did a SelectRelated on that. Sorry, I'm getting a little distracted. Oh, okay. I see what's going on. So what I did here was I in the template have done a query, which I don't always I wouldn't recommend often, but it felt like the right thing to do at the time, and it was the expedient thing. So you can see that there's this course tasks.all. So the way that Django is working is this is a related name. Oh, related. I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but there's some kind of relational object that it attaches with this name course tasks that is informed by the related names in the models, and that's totally unclear. I recognize. So let's look at it. If I look at this at the course task model, you can see that there is this related name attribute. So you can name what the relationship is between a one-to-many relationship that forms when you have a foreign key. And so here you have to say all. If I just tried to say, well, let's look at it. Let's drop the all, and we're going to get the name of the class that I was forgetting and the exception. Related manager. That's what it's called. So the related manager is has the knowledge of the tasks that are linked to this course, or it knows how to get them anyway. It's kind of a wrapper around a query set in a little bit, manner sorts. What you needed to do was use the .all attribute, which tells the related manager, actually, I want you to go query it. I don't want you to act like just the attribute that you are. I want you to behave as a query set in this context. So that's why I added the .all to fetch them. But I think what we really are going to need to do is modify the context data so that we will have this has graded attribute that we needed on the template in our results. So how do we do that? We can, what can we do? We need to, because it's a little tricky because I'm relying on the detail view to do a lot of the fetching, but now we're getting into more than just the detail view, because the detail view is for the course. That's really what's being queried here is, and you can see that right here, it's the query set is defining the object that's coming back from the detail view. But a lot of what this view is less about the course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's there, but it's more about what's in the course. The course is basically a container around these tasks. So we need to figure out how to get all of the necessary bits of data that go into this. And before I go too far along, I think I want to comment out whatever's going on there. There's something not right that's messing up the icons for the moment. And I'm going to forget about that if I don't take care of it now. So let's come over here and say, what can we say? That should work. So we've commented out, oh, that's still broken. I wonder what I did there. Oh, I forgot the closing div. Okay. Oh, I see what I did. I copied in too much stuff. That's the problem. So if I get rid of this little closing div, and now refresh, there we go, back to normal. Okay. Where was I? So we need the data, right? And we need to get the data in there and essentially need to do this has attribute check on the graded work. So I don't think that we can just do this. Let's try the simplest thing that we can think of first. So let's switch this to graded work. I'm guessing I tried this and it didn't work and probably blew up with the exception that I mentioned that would happen if you don't have one. No. Oh. Well, maybe I overcomplicated the other area. That's entirely possible. There is a problem, I'm sure, with the, yeah, oh my goodness. Look at that. There are 215 queries here. So, performance, it's a beast. What's happening? So, I think what's happening is we haven't done the proper SelectRelated. So this is a classic example of a performance problem that you can hit when you're doing looping. So the n+1 query bug is what we're really talking about. I'm gonna jot that down because that's a good discussion. Or I guess it's the more well known as the n+1 query bug. This is a performance bug that will happen commonly when you're dealing with systems like this, which is an object relational mapper, where you're dealing with objects in your native language, not native language as in what we're speaking, but native programming language, and you are trying to get data. And the objects know how to get data from a database and will do it in whatever manner you tell it to. And in this example, what's happening is we have done this query right here. And it says, give me the course that you can find that matches for this user, and also make sure that you select the related grade level. So that's kind of the thing that's above it. And so if we look at the SQL queries and go to the very top, here it is. It's selecting exactly that. It's going to the grade level, doing some inner joins because it has to get to kind of traverse the number of relationships in order to get it to match to the current user, and then doing a filtering on a specific UUID that matches. And that's how we get the specific course. Okay, so that's that part. Grand. We have the data there. So let's look at what's happening in this template. In the template, we are, hold on. In the template, we're doing a loop over all of the tasks. And we did not tell the query to get the tasks data as well. So what's happening is it's doing one loop to get all the tasks in one go. Great, that's one query. But there's a problem. The problem is that every time it gets to task.gradedWork, it says, I don't have the graded work data. So we're in a loop and we're asking for the same data, like data that Django does not have yet. So what it's forced to do is, attempt to go get the query, go get the data, because it doesn't have it. And that's the end part. So the one part is the one query to get the set that you're going to loop over. And then when you start looping over that set, if there's other data that is related to it that you have to go get that you didn't get in the first go, it has to go do other queries. That's really bad for performance. Like you can see, this is locally, and this isn't really a bad case because it's a local database, but it took 26 milliseconds to get all that stuff. And that might seem like a really small amount, but on a real live system, that's not, it would be, 215 queries is going to exhibit very bad behavior very quickly. So how can we fix this? We fix this with adding a SelectRelated to our view. We'll come back over here, and SelectRelated is Django's way of saying, get me other data that I know I'm going to need. It's something that you use when you have foreign key relationships, so a one-to-many relationship, and you can see that I've already done that in the very small case of getting the grade level. Because if we look back at our form, I needed to get the grade level's name. So let's see, we've got 215 queries here. Let's crank it up to 216 for a minute. So let's drop SelectRelated and do a refresh. And what we should see is that number should jump to 216, because now it has to go get the grade level too, because it tried to get the name from the grade level. It didn't have it, so it had to go submit another query to the database. So what we want to do is augment this grade level with the extra stuff that we need. So we're going to need the course tasks, and we're also going to need, well, let's just stop there and see how much that does. It should change nothing. It should still be 215. Oh, not good. So, okay. Here's the rub. This is not something we can do with a SelectRelated. I always forget the scenarios where you can do this or not do this. So let's look at the model for a second. And if you look at it, a course has a grade level. But you notice it doesn't have the course tasks. That's actually defined with a related manager elsewhere. So it can do SelectRelated easily because it knows the foreign key already and knows how to do that lookup. But the course task, since it's defined in this other model, and it's kind of like you can think of it like a directionality sort of thing. It doesn't know how to do the SelectRelated there, which is what it's complaining about. In these scenarios where you can't, SelectRelated is like the thing you should go to first, if it's the right answer, because it can do it all in one query. But the other option is a PrefetchRelated. So PrefetchRelated is a little different. I think I want to make sure I'm telling the truth here before we go too far. Okay, should still be 215. Yeah, okay. So PrefetchRelated is a little smarter and or has more logic to it. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, I recognize that we can't get all of this in a single query because our record doesn't have it. But as soon as I fetch the one record and have data about it, I can also do a second request on the different table, in this case course tasks, and then join the two things together. Okay. And this is sometimes needed. This will be needed if you have like a many-to-many relationship. There's a variety of circumstances where this is the excuse me, the performance change that you need. Sorry. Sorry about that. Frog in my throat. Okay, so, but we still haven't actually solved the performance problem yet. And I have a feeling that the change I'm about to make is not going to work, so we're going to have to get out some big guns to handle this. So what we're really missing is we're getting the course, but we need to prefetch the grade level, the graded work object that is actually like 2 levels down from the course, and it's attached to the course task. So to do that, what I'm going to try and do is this, and I don't know if it's going to work. So I won't talk about it until it blows up in my face or not. Yeah, it's not going to work. Oh, but that's not the name. It's not grade level. It's so let me at least get the name right. Graded work. Yeah. Okay. So this doesn't work. We'll try something else. Nope, it worked. Cool. And look at that. We're down to 5 queries. So what happened? The double underscore is a way to signal to Django that you actually want to get something that is an attribute of the thing prior to it. Because in Python, when we name attributes, we don't really typically use double underscores. You can in circumstances. Let's set that aside if you know more Python. But if there were other models, you might have, other object, and you would use a single underscore. So what Django did was, I think pretty clever, is they said, sometimes you want to get these multiple layers down. So what if we could give you a syntax, like a domain-specific language syntax to get access to other stuff? So, so they introduced this double underscore as a way to say, if you have other object and you need to get something for inside other object that's going to require yet more database queries, you can put this double underscore and go fetch that stuff. So what we've done here is saying exactly that. We've got course tasks that we know we need to get. What we really want is the graded work within the course tasks. And in fact, I'm questioning if we even need this. I'm going to chop this out and see what happens. See if it's smart enough or if I'm going to hit some kind of other thing. Yeah, okay, good. So we've added the icon. We need to change the color. It's showing as I want it to show up gray like the other stuff. That's a trivial change. And we checked the queries to make sure that we're not getting horrible performance. And that's a real value of the Debug Toolbar. If you're making a Django app that is working with a JavaScript client and you don't have access to the Debug Toolbar, you're going to have to check these things in tests and that kind of stuff. Check for the query count if you got something running away from you. So, but that's why I like doing Django templates, because you can work with the Debug Toolbar and quickly get some stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, my chat is open. You feel free to ask questions. I just ask that you be civil and polite, and if you can't, then I'll either get rid of you or ask you to stop being that way. But usually people are polite. So let's make the final tweak on this to change this to a gray, and then I think we can declare that little feature done and move on to the next one. Hopefully in that process, you learned a little bit about performance optimization with Django. Let's come back over to this view here and look down, see what color this was. It's text gray 300. Oops, text gray. So I think what I'm going to do is delete that from the icons that already have it, which are these links, and put it up on the div container. So if I ever need to change it all at once, I can do that. Okay. So this is just meant to be a subtle hint that there's graded work with this. And if we click the task, you can see it's got this checkbox that says is graded. And this is textbook 2A, so we can uncheck this, hit update, come back to that course page, and that icon should be gone. There's a lot of 2A. I wasn't paying attention. I think it was this one. So I think it worked. Here, let's pay attention to the numbers this time. 17 to 19 is the page numbers. It might be the same one, but whatever. So adding is graded should make that appear with the icon. And it does. And this is all dummy data for now that I will that we can play with and wipe out. Like it's not what my wife is actually using, because she's not using it at all yet, in fact. Okay, so what do we have? We've tweaked our view to do some prefetching on the graded work, and we tweaked our template to have the new icon and modify some colors and update the title. Cool. Let's commit this and see, add graded work icon to course page. And this fixes, what does this fix? 53. So fixes, if you don't know, is a shortcut in GitHub that you can apply so that I can do that number. I guess I should also run the test to make sure everything's still passing. Super, it is. So I committed that work, and now if I push it up to the repo, fixes is a handy little word which will notify GitHub that you've fixed it with that particular commit, and will automatically close it for you. Cool. One down. Let's look at what we can do next. And some of these are going to be tricky. Some of these are not going to be worth doing right now. So I'm at this fine line where this product is almost ready for my wife to use it. But it's not quite there yet. But I don't have like a lot of her direct feedback. She hasn't had a chance to look at this in a few days to tell me what she needs next. So, and I'm debating whether we want to bite off some of these issues or not. So we can do some styling, or we can do some logic work. And do any of you have a preference? I don't care one way or the other. I can, as long as I'm making progress, it's all good for me. But if you have thoughts on what you want to see or hear about, we can write some Python code. We can do some HTML and CSS styling. We can talk about Django settings, logic. Okay. Well, that's good enough for me. Thanks, Osada. So here's some tricky bug. And I say careful what I bite off, because we might not actually even solve this one tonight. It depends on how complicated it's going to get. So let's look back at the project. We have this daily view. This daily view is the set of tasks that my kids need to do for the day. Not with that. Yeah, fair enough. Positive attitude, right? So this daily view shows what could be done on this day. So we're looking at February 20th. And oh, by the way, I fixed so if you've watched a couple weeks ago, you'll notice that today is Thursday the 20th, and previous streams had also been saying Thursday because of the time of night that I run, but I actually fixed the time zone issues. So it is reflective of the fact that I'm here in Eastern time in US, and it's showing me the right date. So cool. That was one thing that was fixed. But getting back to this day issue, and I don't even know if you'll spot it, but I guess watch what happens here. We have Reading 2's assignment is Novel Ties Flat Stanley Chapter 3. Let's go to tomorrow and see what it says. Nah, we're on the next day, but we're still at the same thing. So there's the logic bug. The logic bug is that my daily view does not factor in the work that should be done on a previous day. It's only saying like, what is today and what's the next thing to do? So here you go. Here's the next thing to do, even if it's on a day that's far into the future. Okay, so that's the challenge. It's a tricky one because of the data. So let's go look at the view and see if we can make heads or tails of what we need to change. So this view is one of my core views. This home view, that's like the full week right now, and this daily view, which you'll plan to use obviously every day, are the things that she needs. And yeah, that's the stuff that's critical, and it's not specific to one particular Django app. So I put these two views in core, and core is it's a convention you might see used by other people in the Django community. And in fact, there's another little tangent just for fun. So if you haven't checked this out already, you should. Forum.djangoproject.com, and it is a discourse forum that has lots of interesting topics. It's getting busier and busier as more people are discovering it, which is cool. But one of them was a very lively discussion, and not to the point of being heated, but there were some strong opinions. I think it was this one. So this was a big conversation about why do we need apps in Django projects? And this individual was stating that his belief is that it's pretty complicated to start. If you start with, you need a project, and again, I'll illustrate that a Django has a project and it's got applications underneath it. And those are kind of the components of the subsystem. And his point was like, well, that's kind of dumb. It seems to be dumb anyway. Why do we do that? Like, it's, is there a good reason for that? And the answers range and are basically, it's complicated. It's sort of what it comes down to. But the general impression is that having apps at the beginning can give you enough structure that it's just a helpful thing to start with, rather than starting from just a project and then being forced to split things out after the fact. And then there was some back and forth about, well, what if you're prematurely grouping things in the wrong group and you find that something should actually belong to a different app, and what do you do about that? So interesting discussion. You can go read it on your own time, but what I wanted to highlight that I think is in here, yeah. So Andrew Godwin is one of the Django core developers and has done a lot of stuff in Django. He's the person who wrote the migrations system that is is part of Django, and just has been a really prolific and good contributor. So he's somebody you should listen to and think hard on what he's suggesting. But what he's suggesting here in this context is when he starts, he will often start with a core app. If it's a small project, yeah, actually, I sure can. So here is the link to that specific forum post. So he suggests start if you don't know what your apps are going to be yet. That's fine. Start with a core app, and I think that's good advice. I had a notion of the apps that I wanted, so I immediately broke mine out into schools and students and courses. So there were a couple that I knew, but I did want to have a core app. And there are other reasons you might want a core app aside from you just don't know how to logically group your system yet. One reason that I've seen used is like, well, what do you do with the models that don't have a good fit anywhere? Or what if you do with models that are meant to be used by multiple applications like common logic? For instance, I've got this abstract day of week model that's used by both my school year for considering what days of the week should a school year run on, versus an individual course can have a different set of days of the week. If it's like a gym class that only runs once a week or something like that for tennis lessons or something, that's the idea here. So a core app can be that container for common stuff. So just things to consider when you're looking at structuring your Django application. This is one practice that's recommended, and I think has got a lot of value to it. But I used this app to hold my index view, which is still not really doing anything. The index view is like when this is a real service that real people might want to visit and come to. It's like the fancy, check out this cool service and come sign up. But today it just says this, and I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about making something useful so far. But I also have my main view, which is showing the week's worth of data, and I've got my daily view. And when you get right down to it, my daily view has quite a bit of logic in it already to get the proper structure that's needed to list everything that's needed for both of the students that are there. And so that's what's going to make this particular problem tricky, is finding, putting on the schedule the stuff that matches for the right time. So what's most important here is we're going to have the day already calculated. All that stuff is correct, and that's not going to change. That's going to be the day. The school year logic to say, this is saying, are you even allowed to look at, or what school year shows up when you visit this daily page? And that's going to be checked against what school is. Like each user will only get a single school associated with them, and then checking if the school year is in this particular date range. So school years have a start and end date. So that's what's going on there. And then I put in some links to show like forward and backwards direction. That was something that my wife wanted to be able to do, is look at that. But the important part is going to get down into this get schedules method. And that's where things are going to get a little tricky. So we'll deep dive into each piece and give you like a logical understanding of what it's doing. It's sort of a composition method where it's digging layer into layer and putting everything in the right structure on the view itself. And because we have the debug toolbar, we can take a look at what that structure is, so you can get an understanding of the output of it before we try and modify that. So coming back over to templates and looking at the context, what do we have? So it's this key right here of schedules, and it is a list, and that list contains a dictionary, and one part of the dictionary is the set of courses, and the other part of the dictionary is the student. And there's two of them because there are two students in my homeschool here in the Lehman household, and that would be my kids. And then within that list of courses here's the course that we want to do, because we need that for putting on the sidebar here of what's the course that this goes with. And we also need the specific task that the daily view looks at. which was also there. So it's course and task. Those two things kind of pair together. All of that makes sense to me. Structurally, nothing about this needs to change. It will still be course, still be task. What needs to change is that if we're in the future, then this will need to do a look ahead by what is the next, how many days ahead do we have to look? That's what I'm not sure how to do yet. Because when we get down to this, let's see how this is put together. So you can see that it's doing some checking on if there's not a school year, there's no schedules to return. If the school year doesn't run on this day, there's also nothing to show. So then we get down to like a real day that really matters. And that's what this chunk is. So it iterates over each of the students. It gets all their courses, that's not going to change. And gets the student schedule. That's the important bit. And then appends it to the schedule. So what that tells me is that this function, or excuse me, this method is also okay. So we're diving down the next layer. We're getting to this student schedule method is where the logic needs to happen. And this stuff about posting and all of the stuff below it, actually not relevant. So I think we're isolated to the right spot, and we need to talk about how do we get the right thing? How did I even build this list to begin with? So that'll require a bit of understanding about how I've modeled things. So let's bring up the student models, and let's bring up that course models file again. So we just walked through that last issue where we had the course task, right? The way that a student is marked as completing that task, which we saw as like the grayed out work on that list, was if there is an associated course work to go with the course task. So the course work is nothing more than a mapping of a couple of foreign keys, which is the student and the task, and the date on which something was completed. And then we don't have to worry about grade right now. We're only concerned with these two models, I think, of coursework and course task. Coming back over to the schedule, what I needed to do is I needed all of the task IDs that the student has completed for the set of courses that are there. And this is needed to find out what is the next task that's on the list. So if it's in the already completed task list, we don't want to put it on the current day because that's not the thing you need to do. So we have this challenge of the hard part about this is that where I did this course, here's the bug, quote unquote. It's not really a bug, it's a logic issue. So is that a bug? I don't know. But the challenge is that all I did was I said, find me the next task that's not in the completed list. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Like if you have the list of tasks that a student has to complete for a particular course and you have the already completed work, just give me the next one. The problem is that first only applies if it's the current day, right? If it's the second day, then it should be second. And what is that supposed to be? So the question becomes, how do we do this? And I think one way might be, I'm thinking for a second because this gets complicated by other factors, which I'll bring up in a second. The first thing that comes to mind is that we could use a specific index. And what I don't know, I actually don't know how Django will behave if I did that. So let's try it. I know that you can do a slice and get like a limit, but I don't know if we change this from first to 1, if we assume that there is always going to be a next thing, what is Django going to do there? I'm not sure. So let's try that. And sometimes it's easier to just like poke on things and experiment and see what happens. Okay, so it doesn't like that. Wonder why. Because there should be tasks. Should be plenty of tasks to pull from. So why does an index of 1 fail? Should be like, if I was to interpret that as a regular Python list, and the problem is that we're not dealing with a list, we're dealing with a query set. And a query set is a representation of things that need to be queried from the database. So it's not like we're dealing with a pure list here. So I would interpret this as take the course, take all of the course tasks that are associated with the course, exclude all of the tasks that are already considered complete, and get me the first one. That's not what happened. It gave a index error. So what can we learn from this? Let's take it back to first for a moment. And maybe we need to look at the query itself. So we can do that by printing I think if we did this, that should work. So a query set has a query attribute that if you try to get the string representation of it, should print out the query that it's going to do. We haven't actually, well, let's see what this does. See if it logs out anything. So we drop the index so that the page loads again. And what happened? Oh, geez. That is a gnarly looking list. So there's, okay, but we can still interpret this. It's ugly, but we'll just look for a moment. So it's saying get all the course tasks, and they're going to be ordered by an ordering. And you want to fetch them from the course task table. And you want there's a join that happens here because it has to, or it's not a join, I guess, because the course ID is on the course task. So it doesn't have to do a join. It just has that ID. So that's the filtering, the where clause, where the ID is 108. That's the primary key of the course that we need. And not any of these IDs, where course task ID is in that big list of things that are already completed. So that seems like a reasonable query. I want to do, from that, let's find out the count. Okay, so let's take the same thing, and if we change this to count, in fact, we don't need to print that out again. I don't think that's going to be useful. And try it again. Should give us a bunch of things. Oh, you know why it might have failed? I bet one of them is 0. Okay, that's why it failed. So we got an index error because it was trying to do the right thing. It was trying to get the second record, but one of these courses, I don't know which course this is, has no future tasks associated with it. Okay. We're still learning. It's good. So now what? Now we can say, just for the moment, I'm going to hack this in. We're going to say, if course count is greater than 0, then take that, and we'll take the first entry. I'm just trying to get prove that we can do slicing. I'm interested to see what the Django, what kind of query Django is going to issue for this. Is it going to try and get everything, and then after it's fetched it all, we'll then pick off the first one? Or is it somehow got a way to index specifically into the database for that thing? I think it's probably the former, but not sure. So, and we're gonna, this as written right now is going to fail on that same one where it's 0, because this is going to be a local variable, doesn't exist. So we need to put in course task for the moment equal none. So that will cover us in case this line right here does not execute. So if this all works, it should now be not novelTie/Stanley chapter 3. It should be, I presume, chapter 4, or whatever the next assignment was for the reading assignment. And good, it did. All right, let's take a look at the queries that happened at that time. See if we can figure that out. What did it do? And these queries are not great. You can see, I even asked on the forum how to do this. We couldn't really find, there wasn't a great way to do this in a single query, what I'm trying to do. So I'm actually looping over these and passing in this gigantic list. But I'm not trying to kill myself with performance requirements. I have no evidence to say that this is going to slow down my wife's experience so much that she needs this to be ultra performant. So I'm kind of going with a good enough approach. And I left a comment here with what I found about it, or discussion that I had, so that if it ever does become a problem, if I ever get a lot of users on here and they're all complaining this is just not fast enough, then I can revisit this and try and find more clever ways to do this. But for now, this is the kind of the query that I have. Okay. So there is the count query that is happening right before. We might need to keep in there, but we'll see. And here's the select query. We're actually doing the selection. Okay, so it does do okay, so it's kind of clever. It is doing an offset 1. And, I'm going to be, one of my weaknesses as an engineer is I don't know SQL well enough. I can deduce what offset 1 is, but I don't know Postgres well enough to know if there's anything that I should be aware of. What happens when, well, I guess if the offset does not return a value, then what must be happening is Django is translating that into an index error, right? We had a case where the value was 0, and we tried to access the next element, and there was nothing there. So I presume that's what happened. Is that true? Because we have a 0 case, and yeah, it must be true. It's just producing an index error. Okay, so let's come back to this then. What can we do about this? If I keep the count query, then I don't really want to do that. So a count query is an extra database query. I've doubled the number of queries just to do this checking. And count queries aren't super expensive, but you don't really want to double your query count just because. So what might be better to do is treat this as something that's meant to be exceptional. And it's most likely going to be the case. If we're in a daily view and in the middle of a school year, and there are a bunch of classes with a bunch of tasks, and we're going through all of them to see like what is the next thing you need to do, then maybe it's totally reasonable to let the index error happen when it happens, because it's not going to be a common thing. That's important because you don't want to have your Python code like have exceptions all the time. But if stuff is truly exceptional, like the case where there's not going to be tasks, then I think that's a reasonable strategy. So I'm getting a little closer to this index stuff, but there is a challenge here, and the challenge is determining what the right index is. So let's start off with the crude version, I guess is the right way we'll look at this, and then we'll have to do some additional refinement. So we need to wrap this with a try except with an index error, and the other side is going to be course task of none. Okay, and in this scenario we don't need this because there's only a single one. So this is clearly wrong right at the moment. I'm not hard coding 1 because we don't always want to look at the day ahead. So we need to figure out, we need to do some math now of what is the current day and what is the day that we're asking for. And there is days in, the number of days in between, right? But this gets a little bit weirder than that. And I'll talk about that in just a second. It gets weirder because the day that we show, all right, I'm not going to state this very well. So today we're looking at Thursday, right? And let's say we're looking at a couple days from now. This is going to actually say nothing. Oh, it's looking ahead to the next day that the school week runs on. So we're now a couple days ahead in terms of school days. So that's getting us to Monday. Now let's go, just for the sake of discussion, let's go to Wednesday of next week. The challenge with the basic logic of saying, what is today? That today is the 20th. What is the day that is showing the 26th? How many tasks forward do we need to look? Is not a super easy calculation, because if it assumes that a course will run every day that the school day runs. And as I noted earlier when we were talking briefly about the day of the week model that I've created, there are certain courses that don't run every day. So let's pick a good example. My kids are doing some gymnastics stuff. This definitely does not happen every day. They would be exhausted, and so would I, because that'd be a lot of driving. So this happens on some basis. I can't remember if it's once a week or a couple times a week, but it's not every day. So if we're looking ahead all the way till Wednesday of next week, and we're on Thursday, and we're trying to say how many tasks forward do we have to look, if I just took the naive answer and said, well, I'm always bad at this part, so 20th, so the 20th is today, 21st, skip the weekend, so 24, 25, and 26. If I said it was 5 days ahead, and this thing only happened, once a week, then 5 days, the naive version of taking 5 days ahead is actually going to look at like 5 weeks ahead for the once a week kind of class, which is definitely the wrong answer. So when calculating the how many steps to look ahead part of the problem, we need to take in not only the delta of the number of days, but then ask the question, does this course run on every day in between? So that if we need to whittle out some days, we can do that. So that's pretty much the view that we'd have to take on it, is like how, like, running through from 20th to 26th, how many days in there does this course have to run on? So that's the number that we need as the index set. Hopefully all of that made sense. I think it makes sense to me. I'm starting to feel better about this. And it's nice to know that, like, it's really isolated down into this chunk of logic. Some of this is like, and you can see I already have like a method to ask the course, do you run on this day? That's what this runs on day is for. So the thing that we're going to have to do to modify this is that we're going to have to pass in the actual current day that this is happening on, and the day that is going to be rendered for this view. So that is into the future. There's another challenge though. What do we do about the past? You can see the way that this logic is if there is coursework on that day, it tries to put that in for a course. And if there's not, it shows a task. But so this might actually be an easy case to work on the past. If it's the past, it doesn't make sense to show a task, I think. Maybe it does. I'm not sure. Trying to think through what my wife said. In my discussion with her, sometimes, life happens. So ideally, she would go to this app every day that we have school, and she'd check off all of the activities. And so that would be the ideal. And so she said she also wants to be able to look into the future and say, like, the use case for all of this discussion, by the way, is she wants to be able to look into the future a couple days because maybe my kids got ahead in a certain subject for a certain day. So she wants to be able to go in and check off that and say, like, this is done too. Don't worry about this. So that's why she wants to be able to have this forward-looking view. Now the question is, one that I probably cannot answer in the stream, that I need to talk to her with, is should she be able to go into the past as well and say, like, well, this was supposed to be completed, but it's not been completed, so should you be able to say, check it off on a previous day? Well, I don't think I know the answer to that right now. So I think what that is to get at is that we're going to do well to just stick with looking at the future for now, and yeah, that might be enough. So Osaida, you asked for logic, and you're getting logic. Hopefully I haven't spun your head off with, like, the shenanigans that are happening here. I know I'm almost overwhelmed myself in terms of trying to think. That's the challenge of doing a stream at 10:20 at night. Slight regret. Yeah. Okay. So how do we approach this problem? I might suggest that we approach it by looking at this from a test. Yeah, let's do that. So the way that we want to do this is with a test that would show that this current view of the world fails, and so that we're get it back to the way things were before I put all this crap in here. Okay, So this is the current state of the world where it's the wrong answer. And I want to get the test in there and get the answer that we need. And it's probably going to be two tests. There's one for that's like the sort of happy path where there's no skipping of course days. It's all just, if it had the right number of days, we can have a simple offset. And then then we can deal with the more complicated case of if there's skips and stuff. Because that way we can get one version of this and get it a little closer, and then we can refine that. All right. That was a lot of talking. Apologize. Not enough code, too much talk. Here's our daily test case. And there's probably a schedules view. The other problem with this is that in order to produce this schedule, it was a ton of data setup, which is sort of unavoidable. I want these views to be very rich in terms of what it shows to my wife. Yeah, talking it through is the only way to figure it out. Y'all are my rubber duck. Does that mean anything to anybody? Rubber duck programming? And if it doesn't, I'll explain it. Because why not? Yeah. So I'll just do it for a quick book recommendation. So I'm reading Pragmatic Programmer at work, doing a book club. And it's a great book. So I'll recommend it. Is the right edition? Yeah, here we go. Pragmatic Programmer. I'm clearly not like going to give you an affiliate link or something. So, but this is a good book. It's one of my all-time favorites for programming. But in fact, I read the chapter today that talked about rubber duck programming. This concept of just talking to a rubber duck to speak through your problem, and you can often resolve whatever's going on as a debugging technique. So I guess streamers do a lot of rubber duck programming. Okay, so back to the task. We want, what do we want? We want a schedule. And I guess this test is kind of complicated. You can see there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of code setup that's here. And then it calls the view, and then I have a lot of expected output. And thankfully, with this scenario, I think we only have to worry about one course, so that will clean up a lot of this. And I don't think we need to worry about coursework because that's like a different code path. So I'm pretty comfortable saying that this will be less setup. So we need a good test name. What is the test that we care about? We want not next. I want to give it some space. Well, one day is probably enough to prove it'll have to generalize, but one day into the future we'll get at what we're trying to do. So we have got the next day schedule, and that's what we want to start with. And I'm going to take the entire previous version of the test and copy it in here. Then we'll trim it down. And so the other thing we're going to need is this patch. I've patched out time zone. So this test should pass just as is right now. There's no modification at all to it. So let's trim and make sure that it continues to pass. What we ultimately want is a course. We want essentially course 2. We want a course that has a task, but we want the task to be in the future. So we'll tweak that. So let's get rid of everything else for now. 3 and 4 and 1. Let's get them all out of there. So that's going to get out course 3, course 4, and course 1. I think I might want the coursework though. Okay, so we don't have this yet, but I do want to reflect that we need to get a task that is in when there's already some task that's already done. That's good to, it's a good check to have in there to make sure that the data is a little bit reflective of reality. Well, is that true? Because we have that, we're testing that reality up here. We're testing that coursework, when coursework is already done, that it goes down that path. No, I'm not, because look at so, okay. In this test with the schedules, the expected output is checking that is there coursework for that course. That goes down this path. That's good stuff. What this test is not checking though is if I have coursework, will that be excluded from what it shows? Well, maybe that's tested with course 3. Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, it is, because it's showing... No. Yeah. Going back and forth. Sorry, guys. Sorry, y'all. I don't know males or females, men or women on the stream. So what should show up here? If it's a course 3, and it has a course task. Why are you not? I'm trying to struggle. I'm struggling to understand my own data. That's a sign that my test is not very good, because there's too much going on. So let's walk through this one course at a time. Course 1, which I just called course because that's where I started at and I never renamed it, as task 1, and task 1 has completed coursework for the student. So it's showing up as coursework because it's on, the coursework is on the same day. Ah, there it is. That's what I was missing. The day is important. So the next one, course 2, has a task, but there's no coursework. So it's going to show up down in this path. Course 3 has a task, but this is for a different grade level. So I think. Nope, grade level's there. Course task. Why are you not showing up? Oh, it's the day of the week that it's running on. I see. That's what's happening. Okay. I was trying to do some logic to show that case where a course does not run on a certain day, so it's not going to show as a task. So that's also doing the correct thing. So that's this course 3 is checking this line right here, that it runs on that particular day. Okay, fair enough. And course 4 is just one that has no task at all. So my statement earlier still is true, is that the test is not actually checking this exclude filter on the query set. So what is really more accurate is if there were to be, if this task 2, if there were multiple tasks associated with course 2 and one of them was completed. I think I'll do that really quickly just so I feel better about having that, and then we'll, in the next test, we'll trim down that stuff so that there is there's less need to be exhaustive in the test. So we've got task 2, and we'll change the name to 2A and B, I guess. So I want to say task 2B is a thing, and I want to say that the coursework is for task 2A. So now what that should do, well, shoot. What I assume that would do is, by saying that the coursework is complete for that first task, that the second task would show up because the exclude filter would be working. So I'm not sure why that's not working. So let's set self max diff. I think that was the way to do it. Nope. Set that to none. Yeah, have a good night, Osada. Thanks for joining in. Oh, I see. So there's some coursework showing up where it shouldn't be showing up. Multiple. I didn't fix the course, I bet. Again, stare at more. So course 0, which is the thing we're calling course. The numbers are all off too, that's annoying. Course 0 is showing a coursework that matches with a different ID. Okay, what's tricky about this is that I'm not actually printing out the IDs here, so it's hard to know which course is going with what. So course has a coursework created. This should be print. I'll call this coursework. Oh, I see. I gave it an extra name. Didn't need that name. Oh, and the coursework is okay. So there's another problem here. So the first problem is I was shadowing a variable. So I had I'd copied this coursework, and then I had the coursework below, and so it didn't match up because I'd overwritten the variable. So when it was getting down to the expectation, it was saying, hey, this actually looks like, coursework 2 when it's supposed to look like coursework 1. So that was a problem. The other problem is that this thing is actually completed on the same day. So it's now falling into this case of the coursework matches for the day, which is not what we want. So we need to make this fall on an earlier day in order to make it not appear in the same daily check. So the completed date is going to be on date time delta. Let's just make it the day before. Days equal 1. Okay. Now the test passes. Because now now we've got our 2 tasks, and now we're actually checking the exclude filter is doing what it says it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so let's come back to our other test. So now that I have increased confidence that that first test is testing like a lot of the scenarios for all of the kinds of paths that you want to go through and the checks that you want to do, I don't feel the compulsion to do that same thing here. And we can trim this down to check out just what we're interested in. So we need to figure out what it is we're interested in. We need the coursework to be what? We need another task probably. All right. So there's a couple problems with this setup so far. It's assuming that this particular school year only runs on one day. It's only a, wouldn't that be a nice school? Only a school that runs on Fridays. And so the course only runs on a Friday, but I'm not really worried about that yet. So I know that the factories that I have will default to a Monday through Friday week if we leave this off. So let's take this out and have a full week. And let's drop that on the course as well. So now the course that we have and the school year that we have both run on Monday through Friday. I'm going to simplify this because all of these numbers get confusing. So I only want to have numbers when they're actually needed. And clean that up. And the other thing that, like, we don't actually need this, what do we do? We need to set the coursework. Sorry. So we're creating a task, creating a coursework, or you know what? I don't think we need this line. We can delete this by changing course task course. That way it bypasses the need to have an extra factory. I was going to say there is an extra task created when this coursework is created that's happening automatically, and it's happening because there's a subfactory here. But by using this double underscore kind of technique that Django uses in queries, we can say that, hey, when you get to create the course task that is required for coursework, attach this course to that course task. So it just cleans up things a tiny bit. And then we can say the task, we want it to be looking ahead to the next task. And let's make this thing also be completed yesterday. Okay. So I think that's pretty close to what we need. So what's the story of this test? The story of this test is we have we're checking the schedule, and the schedule is mocking out now the current time to be the date time of January 24th, which was when I first wrote this test. So that was a Friday. And we're setting that date to the local date function, which is going to be, it's basically freezing time for our test. The other thing that we need to do is to make this look in the future. So we might actually need to tweak some dates along the way. We have a student, we have a school year. In the school year, there's the grade level. Again, I'm doing too much work. So we could do the grade level. Oh, I have to set the enrollment. Okay, never mind. Grade level is needed in multiple spots. So I could trim that out if I wanted to by saying what? I could say grade level school year equal to school year. And now we trim out grade level. But then we have to do course.grade level. That's okay. All right, that gets rid of one more factory. Anytime I'm trying to trim up this thing because there's so much setup that it's getting confusing. And we now have this thing, it's running, it's doing a check for the today is Friday. And I think that's not what we need long term. We need to put it to a different specified future date so that it can do a comparison of the time that it thinks it is, which is going to be Friday in our example, or we might move it back just so it stays in a week, and with a future date. So in order to make this match up to a Thursday and Friday scenario, and let me just check the calendar, make sure that's correct. Yeah, so January 24th was a Friday. Let's move it back to Thursday so that like that's the time that it's going to check, and we're going to pretend, or we're going to set the view to actually put it on the 24th. So we'll be looking a day ahead, and we know that we're going to be using a school year and a course that are on 5-day weeks. So there should be no silliness there. And so that should have us set up properly. So we're going to change this to 23. And Friday becomes Thursday. Okay. So the other piece that we need to change to get this finally set up how we need it is to use the daily view that takes in the appropriate stuff to put in the future. So if we look at the URLs file, we can see what that is. So there's this daily view is used in 2 different places, or I guess we need it's not the daily, it's the daily for date. Daily for date. They both point to the same view, but they have different paths. And the daily for date takes a year, and the year is 2020, and the month is 1, and the day is 24 for the Friday. So this test, as written, should fail. And it should fail because the task that it's going to pull is actually the task associated with this coursework. Nope, that's not right. There should be another task. We need one more task. We have a coursework here, and We have a first task. So there are 3 tasks total. The one associated with this coursework, the one that we want to skip over, and then the one we actually want it to be. So my speculation is if we give this thing a name for the moment and say wrong task, and then change this to be wrong task, I am hoping that this version will pass. It doesn't. What did I do wrong? Takes 1 positional argument. 2 were given. Oh. Okay. I forgot to pass in the mock time zone. Okay, it passed, which highlights that logic bug that we spent all that time talking about. Because it's pulling from the first of the list when it needs to not pull from that. It needs to pull from something else. Right here. Okay, so the rest of this work is now up to us to make the test pass. We need to get the task to be this second task. And it's showing a difference in task, showing that it's pulling the wrong one. So now we have something to work with. I think we'll try and see if we can get this logic going fairly quickly, and then call it a night from there, because we've been staring at this one for quite a while. My brain's getting worn out. Okay. So, do. The daily view is going to need more than just whatever day we think it's going to be. If we looked at where the schedule was, it's passing in day. And so the day is going to represent the day that this thing is being rendered for. But we also need today. And in order to do that, I have this wrapper, this function here called getLocalToday. I needed it because I was doing localization of time zone stuff, but to get today localized to the user's time, we call this function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refactor this code a little bit, and I'm going to pull out this and call this today. And then in the context where year and month and day are not passed in, as in it's just coming to the daily view and that stuff is not provided, then we're going to set day equal to today. Okay, so that gives us both the 2 points in time that we need to do the calculation. It gives us this like current state of time and the future state. So the next thing to do is pass along today into get schedules. And if I do this, test should still run. Okay, it's still failing. But it's not blowing up with an error message. So it means we haven't broken anything. And let's run the rest of this thing. Should be just 1 failure. Good. So all the other tests are still passing. Means we have confidence that the code that's there is still good. And we have all these checks are still doing the right thing. We're saying only show a schedule if you actually run on this day. That's still correct. But we need to get the students, we need to pass on today to the student schedule as well, because that's where that bit of logic was. I'm going to pass it down to the next layer. And this is where we can actually start using it. Okay, now it's time to think about the logic change that we have to do. And there might be some test. I'm gonna write another test here. I need to test test no future tasks. I don't know that I actually need that. Because if you recall, I was talking about that index error that I'm going to hit. And I want to be able to make sure that this is going to continue to work even in that scenario. But now that I think about that, this course 4 has no tasks. So that test above is going to hit this case and need to handle it. So I think that's okay. Today and day are both date objects. They have a distance from each other. And the distance may be, whoops, that was the wrong view. The distance may be 0 if they're the same, or they may be positive or negative. And so what I need to do is take that calculation, and you can't go less than, you can't index less than 0 in a query set, I'm pretty sure. What does it mean to go off? I mean, I guess you could go, Django could query the end of the database and then start going backwards, because you can do negative indexing with a Python list, but I don't think that'll work. Well, that's curious. What will that do? I'm hoping that'll just blow up. Let's see. Hopefully Django complains in some weird way. Ah, good. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So query sets are not fully like Python lists, so they don't support negative indexes. So we can't, whatever solution we devise, I can't use a negative index to do a lookup, which is good, because it doesn't intuitively make sense. Like if I have a list of tasks and I'm going doing the calculation and I'm trying to go in the past or something like that, it doesn't make sense to go, if like 0 is the current work that needs to be done today, like wrap around that. It just doesn't work. So I think what it is, it needs to be, if it's a negative number, then I think what will need to happen is it will need to be the latest, the first task that's available. That's probably the best that we're going to be able to do. So we need to like clip it to have a minimum, which we can do. So I'm going to do a date comparison and check out the difference between the two. And that number is going to inform the index that we have to run on. And this is the naive version, right? This is the version that assumes that every school day in between is what we want. So maybe that's not the approach we want to take. Maybe we need to start with the approach of like calculating, here's one day and here's the end day, and how many school days does this run on in between. That is tricky. So I think what I'm going to do is go with the naive version for the moment, because my brain is really just slowing down rapidly. And then I will think more on it and maybe mention it in the next stream of what I ended up doing. So the question is doing the date math, and I don't remember if Python's datetime module has logic to do that easily. Like check out the days between, like get the time delta. So that's what we want. We want the time delta in terms of days. So let's check it out. Let's try it. Let's go to a REPL and do some experimentation. So we're going to import datetime. And we're going to do our hypothetical of today and the future. And we can use today's dates because they will be representative of our example. And I believe, oh, what's the datetime constructor? Or the date constructor? Come on. That's datetime. Where's date? Okay. Oh, okay, good. That's what I thought it was going to be. So you build a date with a year, month, and day. So 2020 to 20. What a very unusual day we're on. And tomorrow is datetime date of 2020 to 21. So if I just say tomorrow minus today, what do I get? I get a time delta. So let's assign it to a variable. Tomorrow minus today. And can we do delta days? Yeah, okay. And if I do delta of today minus today, delta days should be 0. Okay, that's what we want. So we're going to do this with just an index instead of first. And what it's going to do, I think, is blow up the previous test, but it will make this test pass. So we're going to say if this, for now, we're just going to put it in here. If this runs on today, then we want to do day delta is equal to day minus today. Interesting. Okay, let's also figure out, let's do the where it's in the past for now. So delta, shoot, killed that. Come back in here, import datetime and day, tomorrow. So let's reverse this. So we were doing today and tomorrow, but if we did today minus tomorrow, what is delta now? -1, right? Okay. So we need to clip this, I think. And so I'm going to say day minus today. But if it's in that scenario where day is actually in the past, then we want to just give the latest for the moment. So let's say task index is going to be the minimum between day delta days and 0. And then you can change the query to this. That looks super funky with what black is doing, but okay. It's really because my screen's too small. So what's going to happen here is a query for that specific offset. And if this should now, I think, pass. No, it did not. Why did you not pass? Well, what was task index? Oh. We don't want the min, we want the max. That's going to do the proper clipping. So previously I just said take the minimum between days and 0, and days in that example was 1. So the minimum between 0 and 1 is 0. So what we're trying to do is prevent negative days from showing up. So we actually want the max, not the min. Okay, now that makes sense. Now the test passes. So we've got our task index, and that test passes, but I have a feeling the other test will fail. Yeah, it gives an index out of range error. So if there's not enough tasks, then it's crashing and burning, which was expected with this technique of looking for a specific index. So we're going to do a try, and we will do except index error. Wow. And we're going to say course task is equal to none. So now what this is saying is if you couldn't find a task, then set it to none and put it in there. So this solves the simple case, but I'm going to put a to-do for fix courses that only run on a subset of days. So with that, in order to do this, we're going to have to basically, at a future point, I'm going to have to loop through all of the days between between today and whatever day this runs on. And it will need to do a summation of every day where course runs on day is true, is what it gets down to. But I'm not going to do that tonight. So now we've now fixed that test. I think we're now in a position to check out what this looks like. This should mostly do the right thing at this point. So we're going to go to today. And so it's saying, we're going to look at the reading example to see if this is working. So Flat Stanley, chapter 3. So tomorrow should be chapter 4. It's chapter 4. And the next day, which is Monday, should be chapter 5. Great. It's actually doing what we want. The query count did not go up dramatically. It's still not great. It still has the same problem that was there before, but it's no worse for wear because it's doing individual offset queries. But I think it's accomplishing the task. It's actually anticipating that there are going to be days in between, and you might want to do a forward look ahead. Now we can also come to today and look at the past. And this is where I'm less certain about how we're going to do this. I think it might just need to be this way if this is what she wants. We'll have to see. If she wants something else, if my wife is looking for something else, then I'll have to deal with that some way. But if I go to February 9th, it's now saying, hey, here's everything that's still on the list. The alternative might be for her to say, hey, if it's in the past, don't show me any of this stuff because the opportunity is gone. But I have a feeling the answer that she may look for is if it's in the past and there's no coursework yet, then continue to show it. And this might actually be the right behavior, because if let's think about the scenario where she's missed a day and she's going back in the past and wants to check off, today is showing Flat Stanley Chapter 3, but oops, that was actually completed yesterday. So now she goes to the previous day, and on the previous day is able to select Flat Stanley Chapter 3, complete that, and it should come back here. It's now completed. So now if she goes back to current today, it should now be Chapter 4. And I think that's going to be the right behavior. Yeah, that feels good. Hopefully she agrees with me. So that brings us to what we needed to cover today. That was a challenging, thorny logic issue, and this is what happens sometimes. Like, you deal with customer requests for your projects, and you have to get a little creative with the ORM and how this works, and figure out all of the components of it. But the strategy that I would recommend is make sure you can understand the problem is always important, and then if you can, write a test to drive behavior. So we found a sort of a bug in the behavior of the way this was behaving, and it took a little while to get the test, but the test was a nice driver that said once I actually had this test in place, getting to the right answer was a matter of making the test pass, because we'd convinced ourselves that this is what we wanted to see. And so that was really nice for that. So I'm going to stop there, and next time I stream, I'll be getting into some other portion of this. I don't know that we'll come back to this particular logic bug. I think that's it's kind of draining to talk through that, and it's very cerebral and very domain specific. So I don't want to make a regular occurrence of that. But if there's any part of this that you want to figure out, that and the whole process that I went through, I do push this stuff up on YouTube, and you can search for me on YouTube as Matt Lehman if you want to subscribe there and find out when videos are posted. If you want to refer back to anything, or maybe you're watching this video from YouTube. Hey, hello if you are. Appreciate you subscribing and following. That way it helps me out to let other people learn more about Django. And what else needs to be said? I should be back at it next week, Wednesday, back at my usual time. This was on Thursday because of some family stuff, but that's okay. And I will see you all next time. Take care.